Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the NPSC webinar on DSCSA. You need to prepare now. For those of you that don't know me, I am Pat Monaco, the CEO of NPSC, and I thank you all for joining us tonight. Before I introduce our speaker, I want to let you know that this session is being recorded, so please post any questions you have into the chat area on your screen, and our speaker will answer them at the conclusion of the presentation. Our speaker this evening is an expert in DSCSA, Mr. Sam Pizzo, the Senior Vice President of Strategic Alliances for Infinitrak. Sam is no stranger to pharmacies, spending the last 30 years working on different pharmacy initiatives from workflow functions to MTM services to a direct-to-consumer patient messaging program to help patients stay on their medication and drive consumer loyalty. For the last 3 years, Sam's been working on providing an efficient solution for pharmacies to be compliant with the Drug Supply Chain Security Act, otherwise known as DSCSA. Sam is working with several key stakeholders in the industry to create awareness, education, and building an efficient pharmacy-centric solution so pharmacies can be fully DSCSA compliant. Understanding this new law will be challenging for pharmacists to comply with. Sam joined a group of experts to help create the Infinitrak DSCSA platform. Sam, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Our attendees are anxious to hear what you have to say. You have the floor, sir.
Great. Thank you, Pat. Appreciate it. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking the time, excuse me, this evening to allow me to present the DSCSA law. And the plan here, the goal is what I'm going to do is go through the law itself and then all the different pieces associated with it. Keep in mind, everything I'm going to cover, we in Infinitrak have that solution available to pharmacies today. So please feel, put any questions. How do you want to do this, Pat? Put the questions in the chat or, okay, you're muted, but yes.
Questions will go in the chat, Sam, so you can complete your full presentation. And if there's questions, they'll be at the end.
Great, thank you. Okay, I am bringing up the. So again, welcome everyone. Thank you for the time this evening. So what I want to do is go into the discussion today. We're going to define what the act is, the key requirements, interoperability, and then of course the Q&A from there. So the Drug Supply Chain Security Act was enacted in 2013. So it's been 10 years in the works. The purpose of it was to basically provide the ability to track, trace, and identify the prescription drugs from the time they're manufactured all the way to the time a dispenser or a pharmacy takes ownership of the drugs. So not to be confused, some people think that it follows all the way to the time it's dispensed to the patient. That is not the case. DSCSA ends at the time that the pharmacy takes ownership. So the purpose of this is to identify, be able to track, trace prescription drugs. The purpose of it, as like I said, is to be able to easier identify any illegitimate suspect or counterfeit products within the U.S. drug supply chain. So that is the overall picture of the act. 10 years in the making, and I'm going to go through the timeline to just kind of show everyone where we're at, and then get into the weeds a little more from that. So in 2015 through 2017, portions of the law have started to be enacted. The earlier versions were geared towards the manufacturer and the wholesalers, and now it's becoming heavier on the responsibilities are now focused on pharmacies. So what I've got here right now, we'll dig into it, is what is a pharmacy responsible for today to be compliant with the act. So first is verifying your licensure. So every time you place an order today, you are supposed to check the licensure of the supplier you're buying from, making the purchase from. Obviously, the main, your primaries, the bigger guys that usually don't have an issue with their licensures, but some of the smaller wholesaler, the smaller folks, it's important to check to make sure their license is active, it's not suspended, revoked, or expired. So we do that automatically at the time that the order is placed. You're supposed to be reconciling the product with the data. So today, when you place an order, you're supposed to receive, before the order gets delivered, an electronic record of that order. And that is what gets stored for 6 years. So that electronic record, today it's called an EDI. So your supplier is supposed to send that record to you. And when you receive the product, technically you're supposed to compare it to the electronic record to reconcile that, yes, I ordered 5 bottles of simvastatin and I received 5 bottles. If not, then you need to, contact your supplier with the discrepancies. Again, you're supposed to hold the data for 6 years. Investigate and quarantine any product. If a product comes in that is damaged, tampered with, or even a suspect product can also be a product that's missing some of the data in the electronic file that you receive, like a lot number or an expiration or something like that. Technically, that is a suspect product, and you're supposed to quarantine until you get the record straightened with your supplier. If you do happen to have an illegitimate or a tampered product or counterfeit, you're supposed to notify the FDA and, of course, your trading partner, your wholesaler or supplier. Any request through an audit or an inspection, if you're requested to provide certain data, you have a 24-hour gap from the auditors or investigators to get that data back to them. And that data could be, they want to know a certain product during a certain time frame within the 6 years that you're holding the data. So this is what's in play today. These are the DSCSA requirements that pharmacies are supposed to be following today. When you receive a product, pharmacies do one of 3 things. One, they just put it on the shelf. A lot of times just check off the paper, the PO that came with it, and they're happy. That's not DSCSA compliance. You can enter the information into your system, and that there you have it, or you can scan it, which we recommend, especially for the future. We recommend scanning the product because it's the most efficient and accurate way to track your products. So fast forwarding, in 2020, there were a couple more pieces that were added to the act. And the first one is that all products must have a unique identifier. As a pharmacy, you are not supposed to order product that does not have a unique identifier. So the onus on this is largely on the manufacturer, which they largely comply. But as a dispenser, you're supposed to confirm that the product does have the 2D barcode or the unique identifier down to the smallest syllable unit. You're supposed to have, as of 2020, updated SOPs, a standard operating procedure on how you handle DSCSA and how you're compliant. Come November 27th of 23, which is, obviously this year, that's when interoperability kicks in. And this is the most complicated aspect of the law. First is the verification of product at the package level. So you're supposed to track each product. There's still some discussions in the industry about how exactly that's going to work. And once November 28th comes around. But today, as it stands, the FDA is going to require that you track products all the way down to the individual bottle. And electronic data exchange. This is probably the most complicated piece in interoperability moving forward. What it's saying is basically it's product tracing. So if a manufacturer wants to get some information on a particular drug that they distributed or moved out of their warehouse a certain timeline, and they think that maybe there was some theft or something that wasn't right, they may want to know if the pharmacy did or the dispenser did receive that product. So they would put a request out electronically, and you as a dispenser, if you're the one that they're asking, has to respond back to the manufacturer electronically. And vice versa. If you're wanting to get information on a product, you would have the ability to electronically request that from a particular manufacturer. That's the data exchange. That's the interoperability, which is going to be implemented later this year. It's a lot to it. There's a lot of moving pieces here, but I'm just trying to go through this as best as possible. So current, the transaction management, you're supposed to store the data, make sure it's correct, accurate, verify that your trading partner has a valid license, have a process in place to deal with suspect product, and have policies and procedures around DSCSA, the law. Come November 2027, I'm sorry, November 27, 23, the product identifiers, the product tracing, the product verification that I just went over. The one I want to mention, and I'll go through this here in a little detail, is EPSIS, EPCIS. It's Electronic Product Code Information Services. For those of you that are familiar with EDI, EDI currently is the standard for DSCSA for data transfer. So when you place an order with your supplier is supposed to send you an EDI file that has all of the, pretty much the pedigree, the T3s, the transaction history, any information in the statement or summary of the product. That is what gets stored. Moving forward, come the end of November, EDI will no longer be a compliant, a DSCA compliant data transfer. It will be EPSIS, or EPCIS. EPCIS, EPSIS is a more robust data transfer. It holds more data, and I'm going to get into what you will need for interoperability. So it holds more data. It's a bidirectional, which allows for the tracing and the traceability of products. So it's a two-way communication protocol, as opposed to EDI, just a one-way communication. And that's just how you get your product information today. So EPSIS is going to be a buzzword now and moving forward from that. I broke this down, instead of trying to go into all the different pieces, I broke it down to where a pharmacy can just, these are questions, and I'll make this deck available too. So Pat, if, you can feel free to, I'll send you the copy to pass this around. But just things to be thinking about if you to be compliant. Do all your drug suppliers provide access to stored data for 6 years and confirm the data is complete and accurate? So one of the bigger misnomers has been that your supplier, your wholesaler has you covered for DSCA. That's not 100% accurate. First of all, a supplier, your primary supplier, cannot provide you with any information from your other, from your secondary, tertiary, or whoever you may be buying from. They can only provide you the records for the data that they sold you. So a lot of the bigger wholesalers have a portal where you can go in and look at your orders, and they do say that for 6 years. What we're finding is they're not always complete or even accurate. There are a small percentage of records that get stored, and they're missing a pertinent part of the record. Could be an NDC, could be a lot number, could be something. And no one's checking that. Everything gets stored. If you're audited, you'll find out that, well, if this and the record that's being audited is incomplete, you're not in compliance. The other piece is aggregated. So you have to go and get the data from all your suppliers, depending on what the product is. So that's something to keep in mind. All your suppliers store the data, and not all of them do. So that's something you need to know if you do decide to do the mandate or comply on your own. Are you verifying the licensure to all your suppliers from which you're purchasing from? This one is, it seems like pretty simple, but if you're buying from from smaller wholesalers, it is important that you do need to make sure that the licensures of that entity is is valid. We do that automatically. We basically we check every time you place an order, we check the supplier, the licensure of that supplier, and we stamp it on the record that gets stored. So if you ever need to bring it up for whatever reason, you'll know that at the time you purchased that order, they had a valid, the supplier had a valid license. Is the product received reconciled to make sure transaction information matches the actual product you receive? So going back to, are you checking to make sure that your records, that the product you're receiving matches the record? This all goes into play. These are all parts today that you need to be making sure that you have when you place them.
Excuse me for a second, Sam. Is any of what you're talking about right now outlined in these slides that you have here, or are you just not ready to start your slides yet?
I was trying to, these are the slides. So
okay, because traditionally, as you go through certain subjects, the slides would come up on the screen so people can kind of follow along with what you're saying.
Okay, I put it, I'm sorry, Pat, I put it in a question form to talk through.
Oh, okay. All right. I mean, I'm not here to tell you. It's just I'm getting questions that people are wondering how come the slides aren't moving.
Oh, wait a minute. What is showing right now?
Just showing the first screen.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm sorry about that. No, I've been going through the deck. I am so sorry. What do you see right now?
The third slide, we have the drug supply chain, the enacting of November 20.
Okay. So you see that now? Did it change?
It changed. Now it's yeah, these are all the things that you were sort of talking about already.
I am so sorry. So it never changed from the first page?
No, it's not going to change unless you change it.
And that's interesting because.
Oh, okay.
I was changing. I was going through.
I thought you were just sort of doing an opening kind of statement, and then we're going to start your slides. But okay.
No, that was going to make.
We're good.
That was going to make for a very long, boring presentation. So I apologize for that. Okay, so you are seeing it now, seeing the slide transition.
Yeah, we're seeing number 3. It starts with the Drug Supply Chain Security Act enacted. It's the 3. You've got 3 bullets there. Outlines the steps. The goal of DSCSA law is to improve detection and removal of potentially.
It's not working then. So this one here, do you see this one?
This is the timeline.
And so you are seeing the transition?
We're seeing where it started in 2015 all the way up to 2023.
And now you're seeing the arrows go across?
Yep.
And then the last piece. This is what I've been talking to. I'm changing the page to where I'm at now. Well, do you see this one now? The key requirements for pharmacies?
No.
Okay, let me take it out of the presentation mode then.
There we go. Key requirements for pharmacies.
Yeah, okay, so this is what I was just going through. I don't know why the presentation mode's not working. This is what I was going through right now.
Right.
Do you want me to just go into this now then? Or?
Well, if you're gonna make the deck available to us, so just keep going from wherever you were.
Okay, yeah, I was on the 3rd bullet here. I'm sorry for I thought.
No, I'm sorry. I would have stopped you sooner if I thought that I thought you were just sort of doing an overall, and then we're going to jump into the screens. But we're good. We're good, Sam.
Okay.
Don't want to.
All right, so these are the current mandates that are required today. And what I was doing here was putting together just the questions as a pharmacy, be thinking about, where you are, what you're doing, how close are you to being compliant, and it should help you at least work through what decision you're going to make to be compliant come November of this year. So the 4th bullet point: how do you identify, investigate, and report suspect products? So those are what happens today when you receive a product, if you've ever received a product that's been tampered with, opened, or what have you. You're supposed to obviously quarantine it until either you reconcile it with your supplier. Do you sell, lend, or borrow with any pharmacy? Unless you're sending a prescription to another pharmacy for an individual, if you do any changing of products between your pharmacy and another pharmacy, you are supposed to provide the electronic paper, the electronic trail that goes with that product, and vice versa. If you buy from someone else, they're supposed to provide you with the electronic data required for you to store. In the event of an audit or inspection, can your pharmacy collect all data in question within a 48-hour window? That kind of goes back to the first point I made earlier about aggregating data. So if you're counting on your supplier, in case you're audited, to provide you the information, and you're using 3 or 4 or 5 different suppliers, even 2 or 3, you still have to go to each one and collect the data and do that within a 48-hour window. Having the data collected in a aggregated format from all your suppliers is just, it's at your fingertips at that point. The last point here is, do you have a standard operating procedure outlining the pharmacy's process? A lot of times when you are audited or a lot of state boards do, when they do inspections or audits, they are now checking off the DSCSA or DSCA guidelines. Are you compliant? And what are you doing to be compliant? They may even ask you to pull up a record from a particular drug a year ago, 2 years ago. But the key piece that they're always looking for is the SOP. Do you have an SOP in place? How are you handling, tracking the product, so on and so forth. So those are the current mandates that are in place today. Okay. Interoperability. So this is actually, this is what is coming down the pike, the final phase of DSCSA, the DSCA law, which is the most complicated as well. Do you have a global location number, or GLN? The GLNs, you have to have one come November 27th. You cannot do product tracing without a GLN number. A GLN number is assigned to a pharmacy. It's basically just another identifier for your location. Some of you may have GLNs, and then some of you don't know if you have one, and some of you don't have one. So we can help with that. If you have a GLN number, then you're set. You know about it. If you're not sure, we have we work with GS1. GS1 is the company. It's a global company that assigns GLN, and this has been done for years in the world. We can tell you if you have a GLN. If you don't, we can help you procure a GLN. In some cases, your wholesaler may also provide you with a GLN. So that is an option. I know McKesson, Cardinal, and Amerisource, I believe Smith Drug as well. Those top 4 I know for sure have procured GLNs from GS1. So in a lot of cases, you can just call your wholesaler and they'll supply it for you. Keep in mind, those are always going to be the wholesaler's GLN number. It'll be assigned to you, but it's always theirs. If you want to get your own, we can help you with that. It's $30 per pharmacy one time, and then like a $10 month annual renewal fee. So it's relatively cheap to get a GLN. Can you accept the second point? Can you accept electronic product code information, EPSIS, that I talked about earlier? In most cases, the answer is no. I work with a lot of the pharmacy software vendors, and we're building integrations with several of them, including Red Sail with Pioneer RX and QS1. Talking to folks at Liberty, they're going to be building out an integration, and several other PMS vendors will provide an integration that you can receive the data, the EPSIS data that way through our system, basically. But it's not something that a pharmacy can do on their own, is the thing. Unless you have a robust IT department. And even some of the larger chains I work with, that have several hundred pharmacies, they're not dealing with EPSIS. They're hiring, outsourcing it to vendors like us because of the complexity and all the tracing and everything that goes back and forth. So that's another piece. Third bullet, how will you monitor all your drug suppliers, that all of your drug suppliers are sending and or storing their product in the accepted EPSIS format and the data is accurate and complete. This is the key thing. Like I mentioned earlier, once interoperability kicks in, or the final phase in November kicks in, EDI data transfer will no longer suffice in order for you to be compliant with the law. So as a vendor, as a DSCSA vendor, we take that responsibility to make sure you are compliant. And part of that is to track all of your suppliers and tracking them where they're at with getting EPSIS ready by November. Come November, and there's going to be some, maybe several, that are not, and I'm sure there'll be a bunch, that are not EPSIS ready. So technically, you as a dispenser, as a pharmacy, and you're purchasing from one of those wholesalers or suppliers, you're technically not compliant because you're not receiving the data in the format that is compliant. So keep that in mind. It's our responsibility, and we will notify you of any supplier that you're buying from that is not sending the data in the proper format. Then you can make the decision if you want to purchase from that supplier or not. So but it's our responsibility to make sure you know. Are you validating products at the package level? That, again, this is interoperability. This is after November. You're going to be required to do that. How are you doing it? Are you scanning? Are you key entering? Or are you just putting the products on the shelf? There are, there's going to be pieces that it's going to take on. Receiving product is going to have another step where you have to confirm every product you receive is what you ordered, and the data that's being stored is in fact the data that is accurate and complete. And then again, like I mentioned, the product tracing. How will you handle product tracing? If a manufacturer is looking for information on a particular product, they reach out to you electronically, and you're supposed to respond electronically on the product, whether you received it or you didn't, type of thing. So in a nutshell, that is the DSCSA laws, what you should be doing today, but you should be the questions you should be asking, and where to go from there. Let me bring up the final slide here. So we're going to have plenty of time for questions. We are working with, obviously, NPSC. We basically have it's a prescription-based application. Basically, it's a portal. It's $85 per month per location. But what happens is, if I can talk through how the system works, if you sign up with Infinitrak, we will basically reach out to you, send you a packet where you just fill in the information. The key piece that we need is your suppliers, a list of your suppliers. From there, we're going to reach out to each supplier, and we're going to get the electronic connectivity going. So every time you place an order, your supplier sends us. Today is the EDI. After November, it's the EPSIS data if they're compliant. And then we take that data, we put it in the portal. We're working with the PMS vendors to get data that you enter into your system over to our portal. And then when you receive the product, you reconcile that what you ordered is what you received, and we store that data. We stamp the licensure, and we store that data for 6 years. Our portal basically has unlimited users, unlimited transactions, trading partners, and we provide a dedicated customer service support, any training, and a resource for any questions with DSCSA in general. So that is, I went through this and just trying to keep it as basic, but knowing that as a pharmacy, this is what I need to be doing, thinking about. And obviously we're working with NPSC as one of their preferred vendors as well. So Yeah, Pat, I think we want to get into the questions.
Yes, Sam, I think one of the things that got asked here is if they get their GLN number
Mhm.
from their wholesaler, is that good for all suppliers? Is that number to be used then with all suppliers?
The answer is yes, yes. So it's not just for McKesson or Amerisource or whoever. If they've given you a GLN, you have a GLN, so you can use it for all your suppliers, correct?
Anyone else with questions, please put them in the chat. We have time today to,
I see there's a few here there, so
okay. Does Infinitrak provide any SOPs for the pharmacy?
yes, we will customize them for your pharmacy. So yes, we will. Let's stop the sharing here and let me get to the questions. The next one is my understanding is that McKesson, ABC, and Cardinals will be providing this.
Yeah, we
Okay.
have Mike Bindert from McKesson on the as one of our attendees tonight. So which is wonderful. Thank you, Mike, for being here. And so that was one of his comments.
So you are correct, Mike. The McKesson, ABC, Cardinal, Smith, and several others, Morris Dixon, so on and so forth, do provide a portal. And that portal for the pharmacies gives them access to be able to look at their data. And if they need to access it for a certain audit or what have you, the data is there. What's not guaranteed is if it's complete, if it's accurate. If you're buying from McKesson and you're being audited, McKesson cannot, or any of them, a wholesaler cannot provide you with another wholesaler's data. So you have to go to each and every wholesaler to get that. And the other piece is going back to the traceability, product tracing. If a manufacturer puts out a request to your pharmacy, the wholesaler is not going to provide that information. That's going to be between you and the manufacturer. So those are some of the key pieces that the wholesalers cannot provide. They can provide some, but not all of the requirements.
Sam, I think we have a question from Jane Tenaglia. Does it matter what type of scanner is needed to scan items received, such as 1D or 2D?
It has to at least be a 2D scanner. So any 2D scanner should be good.
Other questions out there, folks? This is your opportunity to get them all answered.
My understanding is that one number will be used from all the suppliers. Yeah, Mike made a comment here too. My understanding is that the one number will be used for you from all suppliers. It's not different numbers. That's correct. It is one. You're going to have one GLN basically. So you use that for all your purchases, regardless of who you're buying from.
So then, Sam, what would be the purpose of getting your own on your own? I mean, all pharmacies for the most part have a major wholesaler that they're working with. Why would they even want to have or pay for their own? So
the confusing part of this and is the fact that if you're McKesson's your primary and they give you a GLN, and then 2 years down the road you move on to Cardinal or somebody else, you're supposed to be taking that number with you, but it's still owned by McKesson. So that's really the only difference is if you move on to Cardinal or Amerisource or whatever, you're supposed to take that number, but it's still when you look it up, it has McKesson on it. So as a pharmacy, if you don't care, then that's
I get what you're saying.
yeah.
Okay.
So that's really the whole thing. Does it matter? I don't know. Personally, I think it does create some confusion because you have a McKesson or a wholesaler GLN that's owned by the wholesaler, not by the pharmacy. If you get your own, then it's yours, not anyone else's.
Other questions, folks?
There's a good question here. Are there any, I don't have a list of which pharmacies are participating. Anyone on here that's using Infinitrak today? we had, and I do apologize, I don't have the names. I had a couple sign up after the conference.
Right. You joined us at our expo and a number of people did come over to talk to you, I know.
Yep. And the piece of a lot of people are still kind of, mulling it over, trying to think through it, and they are, kind of waiting. But the thing about it is, if you wait too long, it's this summer's going to be crazy with just pharmacies wanting to sign up, and it takes time. And that's one thing I'll bring up is how long does it take to get set up? That varies. It varies on the number of suppliers you have and how friendly your suppliers are to work with. There are some that'll take 2 months to get onboarded with us, and then the average is about 3 to 4 weeks to get everybody onboarded. But we have come across some where their suppliers are not easy to work with, and so we have to use the pharmacies to help us push it along, and that doesn't always help, or it takes months to get something done.
Yeah, Jane and Rocky Tenaglia joined from Nantasket Pharmacy. They have 3 stores. They joined Infinitrak.
Okay, but they're not on this, right?
They are on with us right now. Jane's on.
Oh. Okay, she's the one that asked about the
Right.
scanner. So
And Mike is going to check out about the ownership of the GLN.
yeah, that'd be a good, Mike. That would be a good piece to put out there, because that's the ownership is always going to be under the entity that purchased the GLNs. So I'll be curious, what you come up with on your end.
Oh, I see. It's actually Rocky on with us tonight, and he's a funny guy. Jane is dressed as Rocky. Other questions, folks? Sam, do you have your information to contact you that we can put up here?
Yes, I'll come back to the so this is my email address. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. I'm kind of a little gun shy now, not knowing if it's showing or not.
Yeah.
That's my direct line, my email. But feel free, we can set up a demo. I'm going to provide Pat with the deck and a link to, if you want to schedule a demo. The link that's on here is if you want to sign up, but if you want to sign up, just go straight to the link and get registered. If you want to see a demo, we'll be happy to schedule one-on-one demo with you as well. So I think there's a couple of questions.
That's great. That's great. Valerie just put up your contact information as well in the chat. Thank you, Valerie. Karen put up information that Cardinal is going to be telling people how to get their GLN number.
Okay, great. Chris has a question I'd like to answer. That's a good question. Who is they that is enforcing this? So, excellent question. Right now, people are still wondering if this is going to get pushed back any further than November 27th. The FDA has stated that they are not going to push this back any further, but there's a side chance, and we don't know what the FDA is going to end up doing, but it looks like they're going to have the mandate be November of this year, but they may not enforce it for an additional, few months, a year. I don't know. That's speculation. We don't know for sure, but state boards are already starting to do some audits. We get calls from pharmacies that have been dinged for not having DSCSA or DSCA SOP in place. Some insurance companies, but the one that is starting to there hasn't been too much of this going on, but the one to keep in mind are the PBMs. If this gets put completely into place in November of this year, it's going to be a federal requirement. So PBMs, even though the FDA may not be enforcing it for give you some time to get adjusted, the PBMs can still go out and audit you. So it's potentially the PBMs, it's the state boards, and maybe some insurance companies would be who would be enforcing this. But the FDA will eventually, yes.
Sam, is there any chance that that they might do this in stages? For example, manufacturers first, then wholesalers, and in that way, because when you can just think about this huge conglomerate of people, and all of a sudden on November 27th, everything goes live. Can you just see this thing blowing up? I mean,
there's a lot of discussions going on. PDG had a call today where they went through. There's still a lot of pieces. Pat, it actually has been moving in stages over the last 10 years.
Okay.
So it started with the manufacturers. Manufacturers had to start marking or putting the serial numbers on there. They started doing their piece. Then the manufacturers. This is the final phase, and it's heavy on the pharmacies now to be compliant to receive the data. The problem is now the manufacturers, some of them are complaining, saying, we're not ready. And it's like you've had 10 years, or not 10 years, but as the rules have come out, or the mandates have come out, you had some manufacturers that really have been sleeping behind the wheel. And now it's like, thinking that it's going to get pushed off. It won't be in phases anymore. It's because that actually has happened. It'll be either pushed back, which I don't think is going to happen, but maybe the enforcement of it from the FDA maybe get pushed back. So for the pharmacies, the thing is they have resources with vendors. And I'm not just, there are companies that provide this service. So the pharmacies can't technically say they're not ready, because there are services that they could subscribe to for this. Yes, it's not free, but there are services. It's really the manufacturers and some of the wholesalers. The wholesalers, I think, is going to be the biggest problem. I mean, there's hundreds of them out there, some very small ones, some decent sized ones, and then of course the big ones. It's the medium and small guys that are not going to be ready and may never be ready. And then as a pharmacy, and this is for everyone, as a pharmacy, you're going to have to decide if you want to order from a supplier that could put you at risk. I'm not sure I'm understanding this question from Chris. If the process originates from the manufacturer, is India on board?
I think what he means by that is that so many, generic companies have, operations over in India and China and outside of the US. And, are they going to be agreeable to all of this?
So I don't know, but this is actually becomes a wholesaler question, because they're the ones that are buying from the manufacturers, and they have to do their due diligence to make sure they're buying from a reputable. So when you're buying from McKesson, the last thing you expect is bad product or what have you. So it's the due diligence comes from the supplier to make sure that what they're providing you is legit. So this is the protect the U.S. drug supply chain. That is an interesting question, though. I am going to look at that a little more and see how it affects international companies, but it's more geared towards the supplier purchasing the product. Not, and you're buying from the supplier.
Other questions here tonight from our audience? Okay, well, we're 15 minutes left, and if there aren't any more questions, up. Okay. Right. Mike is saying, I think if they want to sell to the United States, they're going to need to comply. Those companies that are outside of,
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to, if they're shipping stuff into the US, again, it goes back to, whoever's buying from them has to do their due diligence
right.
and has to hit has to comply with all the US regulations.
Okay. Is there anything else here tonight? Any other questions? Well, I guess we're going to wrap it up a little early here tonight. You all have Sam's information if you have questions, or if you'd like more information. He's certainly more than willing to help you in any way that he can. He's been at this, putting this thing together for quite some time, and a number of our stores I know have reached out to him. Yep. So I want to again thank everyone who's joined us here tonight. And as I said, this session's been recorded and it will be up on the NPSC YouTube channel by late Thursday after it's edited. And so, Sam, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we do thank everyone for joining us, and take care, everyone. Have a great evening.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your time. And please reach out to me if you have any questions.
Sam, thanks very much, and happy travels. I know you've got a big travel program ahead of you for the next 5 weeks. So stay healthy and safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Have a great night.